everybody, what's up? Hope you're all having a good day. It's been pretty quiet over here where I am, but I love quiet. It gives me time to reflect and make plans for when it's not so quiet. Today I'm going to be switching gears and we're going to be exploring a different subject today. That would be dragons. So let's get into it. This first one is from 1874. The Japanese Dragon. We shall attempt no detailed description of the Japanese dragon, presuming that most of our readers are already familiar with its appearance on works of art. The creature looks like a winged crocodile, except as to the snout, which is tufted with hair, and the claws, which are very sharp. A celebrated Japanese author, in his masterpiece of Hakenden, describes the monster with dogmatic accuracy. He says, "The dragon is a creature of a very superior order of being. It has a deer's horns, a horse's head, eyes like those of a devil, a neck like that of a snake, a belly like that of a red worm, scales like those of a fish, claws like a hawk's, paws like a tiger's, and ears like a cow's. In the spring, the dragon lives in heaven, in the autumn in the water, in the summer it travels in the clouds and takes its pleasure, in winter it lives in the earth, dormant. It always dwells alone, and never in herds. There are many kinds of dragons, such as the violet, the yellow, the green, the red, the white, the black, and the flying dragon. Some are scaly, some horned, some without horns. When the white dragon breathes, the breath of his lungs goes into the earth and turns to gold. When the violet dragon spits, the spittle becomes balls of pure crystal, of which gems and caskets are made. One kind of dragon has 9 colors on his body, and another can see everything within 100 ri. Another has immense treasures of every sort. Another delights to kill human beings. The water dragon causes floods of rain. When he is sick, the rain has a fishy smell. The fire dragon is only 7 feet long, but his body is of flame. The female dragon products at every partition 9 young. The first young dragon sings, and likes all harmonious sounds. Hence the tops of Japanese bells are cast in the form of this dragon. The second delights in the sounds of musical instruments. Hence the koto, or horizontal harp, and suzumi, a girl's drum struck by the fingers, are ornamented with the figure of this dragon. The third is fond of drinking, and likes all stimulating liquors. Therefore, goblets and drinking cups adorned with representations of this creature. The fourth likes steep and dangerous places. Hence, gables, towers, and projecting beams of temples and pagodas have carved images of this dragon up on them. The fifth is a great destroyer of living things, fond of killing and bloodshed. Therefore, swords are decorated with golden figures of this dragon. The sixth loves learning and delights in literature. Hence, on the covers and title pages of books and literary works are pictures of this creature. The seventh is renowned for its power of hearing. The eighth enjoys sitting, hence the easy chairs are carved in its image. The ninth loves to bear weight. Therefore, the feet of tables and of hibachi, braziers to hold fire, usually made of brass or bronze, are shaped like this creature's feet. As the dragon is the most powerful animal in existence, so the garments of the emperor or mikado are called the dragon robes. His face, the dragon countenance, his body, the dragon body, and his anger, the dragon wrath. So that's kind of interesting. Little tidbits of information about dragons. Okay, this one's from 1894, an English snake story, The Weird Tale of the Terrible Dragon of Sockburn Downs. In the Old English Chop Book and folklore stories, the Yorkshire dragon is always referred to as the Lambton worm, the word worm meaning snake or dragon, Lambton being the name of the man who finally succeeded in slaying the hideous creature. Another old-time English myth, scarcely less popular than that of the Lambton worm, is that of the Dragon of Sockburn Downs. The name of the man who slew the Sockburn nightmare is still preserved, and is that of one of the best-known North Country families. His tomb is still to be seen in the ruins of the church at Sockburn, where also he lay in effigy with a rude sculpture of the dragon at his feet. When the old church had crumbled to an unrecognizable mass of stone and mortar, the effigies of the hero and the worm were removed to Sockburn Hall. Among the other relics preserved at this hall may be seen the identical falchion or sword with which the monster was slain. Nearby, almost in sight of this miniature museum of relics, is a gigantic boulder lying in the midst of Worm Field. Here, the legend says, the creature attempted to hide itself on the day when it was pursued and vanquished by the hero of Sockburn Downs. Okay, the next one is 1883. A modern dragon. He is an inhabitant of South Africa, whence come many of the lions and tigers that so satisfy an imagination born of variegated pictures. He has been seen as the mysterious something serpent has been, but not to be captured. The reliable person, who has had a good view of him, describes him as being 65 feet long and covered with scales. Thus, by the way, is 15 feet longer than the famous one destroyed by the indomitable old knight St. George. Of the latter, an ancient chronicler says, the dragon's sling annoyed the good knight so much that the abominable beast, being no sooner slain and wellering in his venomous gore, than St. George likewise took his death wound from the deep strokes of his sting. Yet retaining his true nobleness of mind, he valiantly returned victor to Coventry, where the whole inhabitants stood without the gates in great splendor to receive him. And he had no sooner arrived before his city and presented her with the dragon's head, than from the abundance of blood that issued from his deep wounds, he was forced to yield up his breath, and the whole country, from the king to the shepherd, mourned for him for the space of a month. The discoverer of our now-a-day dragon is a daring huntsman in the Wissenberg Mountains. On this occasion he was, as be asserted, sitting with a gun loaded with small shot in his hand, waiting for the incautious approach of some unusually audacious jackrabbit. That rabbit, if such were in the vicinity, had an additional reason for keeping out of the way. As the huntsman sat watching, suddenly he heard a strange noise issue from a cave in a mountain nearby, and then saw a veritable dragon of the enormous length mentioned come out and pass him at the distance of only a few feet. Its head was of the size of that of an ox, and was joined by a neck 2 feet in length to a body with an average circumference of 6 feet. The monster passed on, and the voracious observer of it has lived to tell the wondrous tale. It must be conceded that the daring huntsman in search of rabbits exhibited cool discretion in not firing a charge of small shot into the body of the enormous what you may call it, for the beast, unlike medieval dragons, did not breathe fire, although it was possessed of shining and presumably impenetrable scales. He showed his sense, too, by getting out of that neighborhood as fast as his legs would carry him. There might have been other such anachronisms near at hand, which might not have been so inconsiderate as to pass within a few feet of him without investigating to some extent his anatomy. He got off well, but it is a pity that his gun was of such small caliber and his subject of his story of such dimensions. Okay, the next one's from 1850. Legend of the Rhine, the Dragon's Rock. The tradition giving the origin of the name of Drachenfels, or Dragon's Rock, states that once upon a time the mountain was inhabited by a dragon, whose den still exists. To this monster the people paid divine honors and pampered his insatiate appetite with human victims, who were usually selected from the enemies taken during their predatory wars. It chanced that, among other captives, a lovely virgin of high birth, who had become a Christian, fell into their hands. Her surprising beauty excited ardent feelings of love in two of the younger chiefs, who disputed possession of her charms. The elders of the assembly, fearing that an object of so much loveliness might engender discord and animosity, doomed the hapless maiden as an offering to their dreaded idol. Clothed in white, meet emblem of her purity, and crowned with a roseate wreath, she was conducted before the morning's dawn to the mountain, and her fair and delicate form bound to the fatal oak, before which was a stone that served for an altar. As soon as the rising sun had gilded the lofty crags of Drachenfels and emitted a faint ray of light into the monster's cavern, with sinuous and scaly body and wide extended mouth, he writhed towards his prey. A large concourse had flocked from the surrounding... Sorry about that. Okay, where were we? A large concourse had flocked from the surrounding country to witness the tragic spectacle, and few hearts were found unmoved with compassion at the fate of the innocent and unhappy victim. She, the source of their commiseration, with beaming eyes fixed on the heavens, and her hand devoutly upraised, seemed to await, with silent and pious resignation, her impending destruction. As her dire enemy approached, feeling already the baneful influence of his potential breath, she drew from her bosom a small crucifix, and held with firm yet humble confidence the image of the Savior, opposed to the attack of her sanguinary destroyer. In a moment, the dragon's advance was arrested. Recoiling with horror and affright, and sending forth dreadful hissings and hideous yells, he precipitated himself into the profound abyss of the neighboring forest, and was never seen or heard of more. It was owing to this pious maiden, thus miraculously saved, that the Drachenfels became changed from a mountain of idolatry to a stronghold of Christianity, where those who had been converted by the miracle worshipped. Praise Jesus. Okay, here we go. This one is 1797. The Grateful Dragon. In Patras, a city of Achaea, a boy called Phagar had brought up a young dragon, which he kept and nourished with great care, insomuch that the beast conceived the utmost affection for him. When the dragon was grown to a considerable bigness, The citizens caused it to be carried into the wilderness and left there. It happened afterwards that, as this Phogus, being arrived at man's estate, was returning with company from some public show, they were bereft by robbers. That crying out, the dragon immediately knew his voice, came to his rescue, frightened some, and flew others, so preserved the life of his benefactor, and conducted him safe to the city. That's a nice dragon friend to have. Okay, this is 1889. Oh, this is a dragon tree. I think it just pulled up when I was looking for dragons, but I'll go ahead and read it. The oldest living thing. Death of the famous dragon tree that had lived perhaps 10,000 years. With an antiquity rivaling, probably exceeding that of the pyramids of Egypt, and a reputation scarcely inferior, it is remarkable how little notice has been taken of the death of the colossal dragon tree of Orotava in the Canary Islands. This gigantic, hoary-headed vegetable veteran died almost suddenly a few years ago, and may be said, like the deacon's old masterpiece, to have gone to pieces all at once and nothing first, just as bubbles do when they burst. After a babyhood of centuries, decades of maturity, and a decadence of ages, it does seem pitiable that the departure of this wonder of the world should have evoked little or no comment. In accordance with the new theory that plants feel and have a hereafter, it may be that the old dragon tree is receiving elsewhere its meed of praise and reward for a long and respected life. Though called a tree, in truth the renowned curiosity of Orotava was nothing of the sort. It was a kind of gigantic bloated asparagus, and a near blood relation to the fragile, delicate lilies of our gardens. But even Solomon, at his least glorious epoch, would never have been jealous of this phenomena, for the dragon tree is at every period of its strange growth a monstrous, uncouth thing, a creepy evil, suggesting out at all-time creature, fit companion of ungainly pterodactyls and gigantic swartons, with some of which the ancient specimen of Orotava may have been personally acquainted in its younger days. With its blood-red sap exuding freely, though with curdling slowness at every wound, its strange crown of stiff, strong, sword-like leaves at the end of every octopus-like arm, and its scale-clad trunk, it is not difficult to trace the origin of its name. The tree which bears the golden apples is indigenous to the Canaries, and little fancy was required with an imaginative people to turn this monstrous vegetable growth into the guardian dragon. Did it not bleed thick red blood? Did it not bristle with swords? And was not its abode on those isles of the blessed fair beyond the gates of Gades, in the veritable garden of the Hesperides? The ancients always spoke of one dragon guarding the golden fruit, because the monster of Orotava was even then removed from all its comrades in size, bulk, and ghastliness. The old Gaunches venerated the monster, though they were brought up under its shadow, and must have been well accustomed to its peculiarities. They regarded it as possessed of animal life, and deified it, in its hollow trunk performing druidical rites, and they used its blood-red sap, the dragon's blood of commerce, for embalming their dead. When Alonso de Luigo, the conqueror of Tenerife, came to Orotava in 1498, he spared the tree, but scandalized at the profane mysteries which had taken place in its interior, he converted its hollowness into a chapel for Holy Mass. Humboldt, in 1799, gives its height as appearing about 50 or 60 feet, and its circumference near the roots as 45 feet, and the diameter of the trunk at 10 feet from the ground is still 12 English feet, and he computed its age at 10,000 years. The opening was so large that a table was placed in it, round which 14 persons could seat themselves, and a staircase in the interior conducted the visitor up to the height whence the branches sprang. Well, that would be cool. Slow indeed must have been its growth, for 400 years after the visit of the first navigators, Ledru measured the tree most carefully, proving that during that long period the increase had only been 1 foot at the base, the other dimensions being practically identical. Since Humboldt's account, the famous dragon tree of Orotava was visited by nearly all the travelers, historians, monks, peddlers, and soldiers who had the mildest globe-trotting propensity. In 1819, an arm was wrenched off in a storm, and about some 40 years ago, some unscrupulous person cut off a huge piece of the hollow trunk and presented it to the Kew Museum. Another storm in 1867 broke off the upper part, leaving the trunk alone standing. A traveler at that time says the ground underneath was covered with pieces of broken branches, some being 18 feet in circumference. When the land where the tree was growing came into the possession of the late Marquis del Soisel, he nursed the aged vegetable with loving care, filled up the gap in its trunk with masonry, and did all that was possible to prolong its existence. Piazzi Smith, who saw it in 1856, measured the trunk and found it 60 feet high above the ground and 48.5 feet in circumference at that level, and 24 feet in circumference at a height of 14.5 feet. He says, proudly it raises its antique arms above everything around, but how it is hampered. An indigenous wild laurel tree is absolutely in contact on one side, and a Lombardy poplar is almost touching on the other, while there are such numerous peach trees, oleanders, and oranges between and all about that there is hardly a single point from which we can get a fair view. The old tree, moderately credited with 6,000 years of life, has gone the way of all trees, but most felicitously the Marquis del Soisel has planted on its exact site a seedling derived from its most ancient progenitor, and this youngster is now a healthy plant some 4 feet high, looking, in shape only, exactly like a fine long carrot, lightly stuck in the ground by its upper end, and surmounted by a crown of sword-shaped leaves. The visitor to Orotava still climbs up the steep hill above Power to visit the beautiful garden of the Marquis du Soisel and see the spot where the historic tree formerly stood. This baby dragon will probably not flower for 20 or 30 years yet, and it will only branch after it has blossomed. In a neighboring garden there is a dragon which has not yet blossomed, and yet it is more than 40 years old. In botanical language, the dragon tree is Dracano Draco. In old age curious warts appear, and one from the old Orotava tree has been preserved, which is as large as a good-sized coconut, being like that fruit in shape and its rough exterior. Though no particular care has heretowith been taken in the Canaries to rear these curious trees, there are still a few fair-sized specimens for visitors to see, one of the oldest extant being probably that at the gates of the cemetery at Icod. It is mentioned in the ancient chronicle of the conquest of the island of Tenerife, and standing in solitary grandeur is the best specimen to study. There is one other good example at Icod de los Vinos, which maybe is even older. These dragon trees, however, are small and absurdly young when compared with the old veteran which, until recently, guarded the golden apples in the garden of the Hesperides. So there you go. I'm running out of time. Got 8, 6, 5, 4. See you guys next time. Have a good one.